Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the June 18th California High-Speed Rail Authority monthly board meeting to order. Could we take the roll, please?
Yep. Good morning, Director Schenk, Vice Chair Richards.
Here.
Director Curtin. Here. Director Lowenthal. Here. Director Camacho. Here. Director Miller. Here. Senator Bell. Assemblymember Arambula. Chairman Donza.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Would, for agenda, before we start, for public comment, I have one member of the public who'd like to speak, Mr. Schwagel.
How's that? All right. David Schwagel, U.S. High-Speed Rail Association, expressing honest and sincere appreciation for all of those great U.S. High-Speed Rail Association newsletters I've been able to read, as well as all those fantastic high-speed rail conferences I've been able to attend over the last 9 years. When it comes to the federal government, I highly recommend that Gavin Newsom do his magic, rally the states, rally the industrialized nations of the world that have high-speed rail, approach the feds and say, hey, look, we got some special messages for you. First off, we do need to restore that $929 million in federal funding. Second off, we spend a whopping $800 billion a year on defense, and that is way, way too much. That is more than enough to build a nationwide high-speed rail network every year. Third, and finally, we really need to get the oil money and the Koch brothers out of transportation planning and U.S. politics. And feds, anytime you want to play ball with us, that would be absolutely fantastic. Now let's take a look at the two most recent contracts on MERCED to Sacramento. The first was a $7.5 million contract where lines were simply drawn on a map that took out wineries in Lodi, housing in Galt, and Old Town Elk Grove. That was an unengaged $7.5 million consultant. The engaged $1 million consultant who has been going to these high-speed rail conferences all along, who has been attending these board meetings very faithfully, took the time to do low-level and field investigations throughout the entire area, come up with brand new alignments, including the UP Sacramento subdivision that ended up becoming the preferred alignment into Midtown Sacramento and up to the airport. So I highly recommend that we take a long, deep dive into that $1 million contract on MERCED to Sacramento. They were engaged. They had friends in high places. They got the troops rallied between MERCED and Sacramento, and they delivered extraordinary value for the money. Industry engagement is absolutely key for success, and that needs to be the metric that's front and center on Gavin Newsom's Transparency and Accountability webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwagel. We do have one other comment from Mr. LeBrun.
Hello again, directors. So if you go right to the end of your correspondence packet, there is a letter from me in there, which talks about something called Panoche Pass, and I'll read to you again what it says in Wikipedia. Panoche Pass is a mountain pass within the Diablo Range in San Benito County, connecting the southern extremity of the Santa Clara Valley in the west to the Panoche Valley and San Joaquin Valley in the east. And why was this ignored 20 years ago? Well, I've got the link for you to point you to alternatives analysis, and the reason it was ignored is because the express trip between Sacramento and San Jose was estimated to be 37 minutes longer using the Panoche Pass. Now, my question to you is, why would anybody in their right mind go between Sacramento and San Jose via the Panoche or Pacheco? That's a question for you. But then the letter goes on and gives you the complete alignment, which is really straightforward. It starts off by an existing privately owned line between Gilroy and Hollister, and the people who own that line would be very interested in talking to you. It's the San Benito Railroad LLC. And then you've got the 50 miles, which are tough to actually go to the pass itself. It's not tough because it's really, highly mountainous terrain. The problem is that it's a utilities corridor. Okay, there's one high voltage line and 3 pipelines, and the 3 pipelines are the issue because they happen to be clashing with high-speed alignment. And then once you get to I-5, which, by the way, at that point, you can just make a right, head for LA. You just save yourself 10 minutes. It's a straight shot up Panoche Road. There's no discussion where we're going there. And then you hit another privately owned line, which is called the San Joaquin Valley Railroad, that takes you straight into Fresno. Now, if you're familiar with this famous I'll just wrap up here, Fresno Trench. Right now, you're wasting $1 billion, okay, trenching under the line that goes to Panoche Pass. You're spending $1 billion on 1 mile, blowing up utilities, Highway 180, and God knows what else. No, stop that. Head straight to Silicon Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, I think we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is approving the minutes from the May 21st meeting. Are there any comments or additions to the minutes?
Yes, I would just like we don't need a vote, but I believe I'd like to get a clarification for the amendment that I made to the motion. If I could read it into the record.
Please.
I amended the motion to direct the staff to staff either early operator or with KPMG to come back to the board at our June meeting with an analysis and a side-by-side comparison of the LA corridor defined by Anaheim, LA, and Burbank, and the Central Valley, which should include the best use of funds, including ridership, greenhouse gas savings, congestion relief, near-term benefits, completion dates, and potential for private and local matching funds.
Okay, thank you.
That would be it. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes for for the May meeting?
Can I just ask a question? Director Camacho, so is that amending the motion? Is that
sorry?
the effect of that? I'm sorry, your clarification, does it amend we passed a motion last meeting.
Yes.
Does what you just read amend that motion?
It was just never reflected in the minutes that were received. Other than, I believe it was just stated as a side-by-side comparison period, and there was nothing, no information that I saw, that, at least in my packet. So I wanted, just for clarification, and I've checked with legal to say that this would be the manner in which to do it.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with it so long as it's consistent with we did pass a motion, I think, on that last
You're right, and if in fact if the motion was passed, then we should have an accurate reflection of the motion that was passed, and that has not been provided to us. So I'm not sure what we're approving unless we see it in writing.
Yeah, maybe you can help us. Is it?
Mr. Chairman, could you read it again? I'm sorry, your clarification. Ernie?
Yes.
Yeah.
He wants you to read it again. Oh, shall I read it again?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Because I didn't follow it that carefully, not realizing quite what was happening.
The amendment stated, I amend the motion to direct the staff to come back to the board at our June meeting with an analysis or a side-by-side comparison of the LA corridor defined by Anaheim, LA, Burbank, and the Central Valley, which should include the best use of funds, including ridership, greenhouse gas savings, congestion relief, near-term benefits, and completion dates, and the potential for private and local matching funds.
And go ahead.
I would recommend to the board that this be handled as an amendment to the minutes, to leave the existing resolution in place for clarity. Because I think what Mr. Director Camacho is requesting is the staff to return. And if staff would return per Mr. Camacho's request, then this could be handled more cleanly as just an amendment to the minutes.
Okay, so moved with the amendment.
Is there a second? Okay. Any other comments or corrections? Right.
Vice Chair Richards,
Yes.
Director Curtin. Yes. Director Lowenthal. Director Camacho,
Yes.
Director Miller. Chairman Donsa.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you for
clarification.
indulging.
Okay. We have pulled item 2 to provide staff with some more time to prepare for the request for qualifications for track and system procurement. So we will move on to item number 3. This is a action item to consider conforming the existing board CEO delegation policy to board actions that were taken at the May 21st board meeting.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board of Directors. My name is Scott Jarvis, the Authority's Chief Engineer, and I am presenting an action item to recommend approval of amending Board Policy Number 11-001 as it relates to the delegation of contracting authority to the CEO. Last month in May, the Board accepted the updated program baseline and delegated authority to the CEO to manage budget and schedule contingencies included in the updated program baseline, with required reporting to the Finance and Audit Committee at its regular meetings or upon request. That acceptance created a need to conform the existing CEO delegated contracting authority contained in the board policy, which was last updated in August of 2018. So therefore, this request is for the board to consider and approve amending the existing board policy on CEO delegation to enable the CEO to procure, approve, and manage contracts in accordance with the program baseline, which is the authority's overall plan to deliver the program with oversight by the board. So specifically, the request entails 5 items. 1 is to allow the CEO to approve and execute new contracts up to $25 million without board approval, provided the associated action is consistent with the program baseline and program budget. 2 is to require board approval of all new contracts greater than $25 million. 3 is to allow the CEO to amend any contract as to time only, provided that the action is consistent with the program baseline schedule. You're seeing a theme here with the program baseline. And the 4th is to allow the CEO to amend any contract by any dollar amount, provided the action is consistent with the program baseline and the program budget. So, and related to those contract amendments for reporting, require the CEO to report 1 on contingency balance trending information to the Finance and Audit Committee at its regular meetings or more frequently upon request. And 2 is any single contingency use equal to or greater than $25 million would be reported to the board chairperson. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions?
I do, yeah. So subsection D in the motion is contingent, is part of the motion that goes to E, so that D is subject to the requirements in subsection E, or whatever you call these things. You following me?
Yes, I believe I do. Yes, so E does, it pertains to contingency balances, and so that is connected with the amendments in subsection D. So when there is a contract amendment in section D, you look at E, and so that would be reported. Any shift of contingency balance created by subsection D would be reported monthly, and then any contingency balance usage of over 25 million, any single usage would be reported to the board chairperson.
Okay, that's good, clarifies it.
Okay.
I move the item.
Second.
Do you have a question? Yes, or comment?
Quick question. Designee, who's covered under that? Are there job titles? Are there positions?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the board authorizes the CEO or designee.
I see. Yes, there are internal procedures within the authority as far as who the CEO has delegated to take the actions. And so that pertains to both the design-build contracts and our A&E, our architectural and engineering contracts. So I'd be happy to provide additional information related to that internal delegation that the CEO has delegated.
Okay, and those are written procedures?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, motion's been moved and seconded.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Donza?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. The motion is approved. We move to item number 4, an update on San Jose Diridon integrated station concept and upcoming Northern California program milestones.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and directors. My name is Boris Lipkin. I'm the Northern California Regional Director for the authority. And this item is really intended as an information item on two elements. One is to provide an update to the board on the Diridon Integrated Station Concept Plan, which is a cooperative effort that we have in San Jose with VTA, Caltrain, and the city of San Jose to plan for the station, as well as what we're going to be doing in Northern California over the next few months in preparation for identifying the preferred alternatives in the region in the interface between those two processes. So last year, we entered into a cooperative agreement with the other 3 partner agencies, really looking to how we can create a shared vision amongst everybody that looks at creating an integrated hub amongst all the different transportation modes, as well as the surrounding land uses in the area. And so this is a different way for us to work in terms of looking at the station, not just looking at how do we add high-speed rail to it, which is what we have done historically, but really looking at developing a much bigger vision for it. And the reason that this was sort of really timely is that there's a lot going on in this particular station area. So just to orient you a little bit in terms of the geography of San Jose, the station is in the middle of that kind of blue and red box in the middle. Downtown is off on the right side of the screen, and then the SAP Center is the arena that's where the Sharks play off of Santa Clara Street. And what's going on in this area in particular is you have all these different transportation modes coming together with Caltrain electrification currently under construction. We have the BART project coming in along Santa Clara Street and adding a whole new way of getting to and from the East Bay to San Jose. Of course, you have our environmental process looking at the San Jose to MERCED project section and adding high-speed rail, as well as the Diridon Station area plan and the land use around the station and Google's master development in the area. So all of these things combined really will transform this into a multimodal hub and really a new urban center for San Jose. Compared to where we are today, there's about 17,000 rail passengers at the station currently. That number will go to about 140,000 by 2040. So we're seeing massive growth in this area. And so instead of having all of these projects as sort of one-offs and doing things independently, this is really a goal of creating an integrated vision for how we tie all these different modes together in a comprehensive way. So this started, as I mentioned last year, with sort of developing the philosophy behind it and some key objectives that the partner agencies have all bought into. So really looking to create a world-class transportation hub, providing seamless connections for customers and the users of the station, to both transfer between modes that are going to be there with lots of different connecting services, as well as with surrounding neighborhoods in the rest of downtown San Jose. We established key objectives that are, as you'll see, kind of a mix of both transportation and mobility objectives that we have, and obviously from a high-speed rail perspective, that's where our key is really on the transportation side, but also making sure that there's a balance with the urban integration side of the equation, and the station being a catalyst for development and a destination in its own right. To kind of walk you through a little bit, and there's a lot on this slide, but the way that this process has gone is we brought on a team called Arcadis Bentham Crowell, which is a couple of Dutch firms who've been helping us along the way. And part of the philosophy that they've brought to the project is looking to design from the tracks out. And what that means is really starting with the big moves. And so what you see on the top line of this graphic is the kind of key things around the heavy rail corridor. So this is where high-speed rail would go, where Caltrain would go. So looking at, starting on the left, the platforms either being at grade or elevated, about 25 or 30 feet above the ground for everybody. We looked at a variety of other options, but these were the two that were the most promising. Looking at where the center of the station would be, either between kind of Santa Clara Street, that's closer to the Sharks Arena, or a little bit further south to where it is today, or another option called Stover Street. And then looking at the alignment north and south, either the existing corridor or a couple different options on either one of those. And so starting with those kind of big pieces, we've started to develop layouts or different options for how you can fit the different components together, compiling the kit of parts. And so this is all of the connecting modes that are a little bit easier to kind of play around with a little bit. So we can have VTA buses, where do taxis go, where does pickup and access, all these other components that are important for an integrated station. So to give you a sense of how that would work is you can have sort of almost infinite permutations with all of these different components, but things start to become constrained when you start to identify specific items. So if you pick these four at the top, you have a certain elements that are still feasible and certain ones that aren't. When you switch that to, say, Santa Clara Street as the station location, you can see that a few additional components start to fall out and really narrow you in on what are sort of feasible combinations that we can look at. And so where we are right now is we've developed 3 conceptual layouts that start to piece these different elements together into a full set to be able to evaluate the different trade-offs between them, see what works, see what doesn't. They're not meant to be alternatives that we pick one out of the 3 by any means, but really meant to give us the guidelines of, okay, well, this one seemed to really excel when it came to development around the station, but maybe this one worked better from a multimodal hub perspective. So to walk you through the 3 layouts that we have right now at this kind of conceptual stage, this is what the station looks like today. You can see the SAP Center. The historic building is that kind of dark brown in the middle. The VTA buses are right next to it. Light rail goes under the station and comes out on the other end. And pickup and drop off is in front of the station. The kind of key streets are Santa Clara closer to the SAP Center, and then San Fernando is where the brown ends that you see there. So the first layout that we've kind of developed has been what we call the San Fernando at grade layout. And so this one maintains the tracks at grade, keeps the station hall towards San Fernando Street, has light rail next to it, and it uses the existing north and south corridors. So this is probably the one that's most similar to what's out there today. It's the easiest to build, it's the easiest to implement, but it has a longer distance between the heavy rail station and BART, and it doesn't give as good a connection for east-west passages for pedestrians that might be coming from the east side of the tracks to the west side of the tracks. The second layout moves the station further north towards Santa Clara Street and then elevates it. This really brings together all of the rail modes where the heavy rail, so us and Caltrain, would be right next to where BART is, as well as where light rail is. And then this one comes with a new northern corridor that you can see the bend moves further north, and which would involve also relocating the Caltrain maintenance facility that's there. And this one also allows for a elevated structure for us over 280 and highways 280 and 87 to the south, using that as a second route for some of the electric trains, not having all the trains go through the neighborhood that's south of the station. The third option looks at having the Stover Street alternative for the station, also elevated using the existing corridor on the south and the new corridor on the north, and creating an open space and kind of a plaza area in front of the station, having light rail connections there at the station as well. And where it's new in this one, you can kind of see it in where the purple and yellow is it also creates an elevated structure for pickup and drop off, as well as intercity buses that creates a more direct connection to the platforms. So once again, these are sort of different concepts that we're tinkering around with and playing with. And this is the summary of those different components amongst them that we've developed so far. As part of the next steps, this is sort of where we're bringing these out to the public, looking to get feedback on sort of how do we mix and match some of these components, what seems to get a kind of a positive reaction, where do we see some issues, and really looking to continue to refine each of them and make each one of them better, and then move towards some form of draft vision that we would bring back to the partner agencies later on this year. So all of this is still lots of moving pieces, but this is sort of a few components that we've looked at so far in the process. So switching gears a little bit, and I'm happy to answer questions about this, but I want to kind of finish up with what we're doing in Northern California that's coming up, and there's an important interface point between kind of our environmental process and what's coming up there, as well as what's going on through the DISC process. Just to kind of give you a little bit of context and table setting, there's a lot on here, but this is really meant to show how program development happens across these various projects. We have everything from Transbay Terminal, which took a few decades to ultimately get through, but it was built and finished in 2018 and is about to reopen again. Caltrain electrification is under construction, and we've done a lot of work to get kind of maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through our environmental process. There's lots of detailed work that's gone into that. With DISC, it's at an earlier stage of development, so we don't know what the future holds. It can move certainly faster than we have on some of this, but there's lots of work for us to do in terms of just project development efforts that are in front of us to continue to develop this beyond the very conceptual designs and elements that we've looked at so far. So in where we are, the kind of next key milestone in Northern California is going to be the identification of the preferred alternatives for the 2 Northern California project sections, San Francisco to San Jose and San Jose to Merced. These are the last 2 sections of the phase 1 system where we haven't identified the state's preferred alternative yet. And so this is going to be an important milestone that we'll be bringing to the board in September. So for the San Jose to Merced project section, we have 4 end-to-end alternatives. They stretch from Scott Boulevard, that's about 6 miles north of Diridon Station, all the way through to Carlucci Road, which is where it meets the Central Valley Y. And we have some alternatives will overlap and differentiate in different parts of the corridor. The most differences are in the Gilroy area. When it comes to San Jose and at the station, what we've looked at is 2 separate concepts. Both of them are focused on looking at how do we keep the existing station exactly as it is and add high-speed rail to it. So one has been an elevated alternative, creating a viaduct above the existing station, and then having that go over 280-87, similar to one of the layouts that we talked about through the DISC process. And then the second option is looking to make minimal changes and keep an at-grade station, modifying a couple of platforms and creating some access to those, but really keeping the station almost exactly as it is today. That's what we've studied so far from a high-speed rail perspective, and that's what's in our going into our environmental documents, understanding that DISC will come up with a bigger vision, and we'll need to continue to look at those interface points and how those things will line up and match up with each other in the future. In terms of just where we are in the process, we've had the range of alternatives that we've developed. We've almost completed the evaluation of those alternatives, and sort of our next step is going to be releasing the staff recommendation for the state's preferred alternative to the public. We'll do that on July 1st. And conducting outreach in July and August, looking to bring back the feedback that we hear from the community so that when we're asked the board to make its determination about the state's preferred alternative, you have both the value of the staff work and recommendation, as well as what the outcomes of that engagement will be through the summertime. Just to give you a sense of kind of upcoming milestones and how all this fits together, this starts with the top line of the environmental process for both project sections. In green, you have the San Jose to Merced project section. In yellow or orange is the San Francisco to San Jose. Our goal is to get through the environmental process in Northern California in the next couple of years. That first milestone is in September, and so as I mentioned, we'll start in July with community working group meetings across the region, followed by open houses in the August timeframe, as well as we've had requests from numerous city councils and other boards of public agencies who have asked us to come and give them an update. So I certainly expect that we'll hear lots of good feedback in the coming months, and we'll be able to bring that back to you when we ask you to identify the state's preferred alternative in September. On the bottom, you have the milestones from the DISC process. Right now, we have the 3 layouts that have been developed so far. We're going to be bringing back the draft vision at some point in the fall or winter, and then looking to start the phase 2 of that planning effort, kind of moving to the next stage, either late 2019 or early 2020. And with that, I think I'll pause here and open for questions.
Great, thank you. It's a very helpful update. Questions or from? Go ahead.
Thank you for that. That was very informative. I know about a year ago, or maybe a little bit longer, we actually met down in San Jose, and we also had a public hearing on this issue. And I know at that time, the controversy between elevated and at grade was being talked about, and I'm assuming still being talked about. So in your alternatives, I noticed you had 1 at grade and 2 elevated. I don't know where the staff is going on that, but just for me as a member of the board, obviously working with our partners is important. 2, I think walkability and bikes on your matrix of all those diamonds that you had. You know, if you're getting off a train and you're trying to catch BART, or you're trying to catch a bus, or you're trying to catch light rail, you know, it would be nice to be able to walk to that instead of having to catch another thing to make it to your next mode of transportation. So I don't know if walkability, or if you have that, you know, a lot of transportation projects have that circle of what's the maximum amount people will really walk. You know, it's usually 10 minutes, or, you know, carrying luggage, whatever. So do you have we adopted policies or principles, or how do you decide as a staff what's important in determining an alternative?
Sure. So I think the way that I would sort of frame it and this is where the 2 processes are important, in that for the DISC process, we're doing a lot more work looking at the details of those access modes. And, you know, for example, can either San Fernando or Santa Clara become a bike corridor to get to downtown San Jose? That really helps to have the city involved in that process, because that's sort of outside of, for example, our jurisdiction. So that's why the DISC process is really a great place to have some of those ideas, and that's what we're certainly looking at, those things. For a kind of how we are identifying the preferred alternative, it's really a combination of 3 factors or 3 sets of factors that we evaluate across the entire project section. So it's not kind of on a 1 mile by 1 mile basis, but for the entire section, trying to balance between sort of system operations and the delivery characteristics. So this is travel times, you know, how are we, you know, we have one of our objectives is to be parallel to existing transportation corridors when we can be. Certainly cost is a variable for both operations and for capital costs in that set of factors. We have a series of environmental factors, so things like impacts to wetlands and waters of the U.S., as well as community factors that kind of is the large 3rd bucket that we hear from, you know, whether it's noise effects or some transportation effects or other areas that have been brought up to us by the communities, or that really have an impact to, you know, more people than maybe the natural environment that we have in the environmental factors. And so what we try to do when we bring kind of the staff recommendation is find the balance between the alternatives for how we hit all of those different elements. Certainly as we have TOD policies and goals that we strive for at stations, we look at those things, but our ability to actually implement a lot of that stuff is really dependent on these kinds of partnerships that we have with DISC.
Right. No, that's great. So when you bring the preferred alternative to us in, I guess, September, will you show us comparisons of, you know, how those alternatives you looked at
Yes.
displayed out?
Yes, that's exactly what we will be bringing back.
Okay.
That's the technical analysis that the staff will give to you, as well as when we bring that out to the communities, we're going to share that with everybody and vet that through our outreach process to make sure that we not only give you the view from kind of that technical lens of looking at all those different factors, but also what the community said back to us when we shared that with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Yes, please.
Thank you. That was really a wonderful report. And I guess I'm wondering, I know every consultant who works for us does things a little bit differently. For me, it would be really helpful, and this is not directed at you, but generally to our staff, to have some consistent format. So when we're looking, the northern section, it's one way, as you presented. When we look at the Central Valley, it'd be wonderful if it was the same format, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks. The only thing I'll say on that is we have purposefully differentiated this kind of slide template because those are joint slides that each of the agencies is bringing to their boards. And it purposefully looks different. I think we do have a consistent template that's going to be this one going forward for high-speed rail only stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the CEO report, and speaking for Brian Kelly today is Brian Ennis.
Sure. Good morning. And Brian Kelly did provide me an update to pass along. Brian's 12-hour surgery was a success. He has regained his voice. A few of us have been lucky enough to hear that. It's strong. He's recuperating so he can come back at full strength on Monday, July 1st. He's doing well and looking forward to getting back to work. I wanted to also provide a report to the board per direction of the May meeting on the Southern California study and the comparative analysis. The authority's early train operator, Deutschmann, will lead a team for the development of a separate study for operations in the Southern California high-speed rail corridor and provide a side-by-side comparison of the Peninsula, Central Valley, and Southern California sections. The ETO will coordinate with rail operators in those segments, as well as the State Transportation Agency and Caltrans. The study will be conducted in 2 phases. The first phase will produce an interim report. The ETO will gather information from third parties, develop an assumptions register, outline service concepts for each scenario, and make preliminary conclusions. The interim report will lack the full detail on costs and benefits, which will be developed for the final report. The interim report is expected to be completed in time for the September board meeting. Second phase would be the final report. The final report will involve additional work with third parties and collection and analysis of information to develop calculations for ridership, revenue, capital expenditures, operating cost, greenhouse gas benefits, and congestion relief, as well as near-term benefits, the completion date, and any potential for private investment and local matching funds. Note, while most of the work is focused on Southern California, the scope requires additional work for the Central Valley and the Peninsula as well to develop all of those comparable data. Similar to the timeline for the Central Valley and Peninsula studies, which were completed last fall, this is expected to take approximately 4 additional months, and that final report will be completed in time to be released concurrent with the draft 2020 business plan or early in 2020, probably February of 2020. The last item for the CEO report, I will turn it over to Justin Chichurka with High Speed Rail, who's going to provide some new video that was produced for the High Speed Rail segment in the Central Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. My name is Justin Chichurka. I'm the multimedia manager here at the Authority. Our unit is responsible for all the wonderful videos that you see on social media and other platforms, along with the other graphic design. What I'm going to show you today is some new animations we've come up with that highlight some of the regions that we're currently building in and give you an idea of what it is this program will look like when it's up and running. So we put together 4 different clips here. This first section here is what will be a typical section in the Central Valley. This is near Corcoran. What I like about this portion of the video is it gives you an idea of what the train looks like in comparison to other forms of travel. Let me back that up just a little bit. You have freight, and also Amtrak will show up in that. You also get a highlight of some of the other structures that are being built. There's an overcrossing that the train passes under. There are undercrossings for animals, wildlife undercrossings. You also see some of the catenary systems and the like. The next section is really cool. This is the pergola and the San Joaquin River Viaduct in North Fresno. This is also, as you know, it's about a mile long. It also has the arches, which incidentally are under construction currently. which you see right there. This is an iconic structure and serves as the northern gateway into Fresno. And again, you kind of see it in comparison to Highway 99 there and the current trestle that crosses over the river. This is another really cool perspective going over the Cedar Viaduct into Fresno from the south, and you see how it crosses. It's got the double arches crossing over Highway 99, also under construction now. And this might be my new favorite. This is the Fresno Trench. This is an opportunity to see what the train looks like going through the trench, which I don't think most people will ever get to see that perspective. So these videos will be made available when we roll out our new website here in the coming days. We'll put them on our newsroom section, which will allow media to download them, and hopefully we'll start seeing these videos instead of the blue and yellow videos that we've been looking at for about a decade now.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And look forward to seeing those trains with a lot of people on them somewhere down the road, so thank you. And those will be available early July, you said, in the...
Yeah. We'll be rolling out our new website here in the next couple of weeks, certainly by July 1st as part of the 508 ADA compliance mandate. We'll have a new section on there. It is a newsroom section where you'll be able to download high-resolution photos of construction, videos, these animations, things like that. It'll be a place where the media can get some of this stuff so that they can show the progress we're making as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any comments or questions on the report? Just like to say, Brian Yannis, please pass on our best to Brian Kelly. I was on the phone with him yesterday, and it was great to hear his very strong and forceful voice on the phone call, so it would be great to have him back, so thank you. If there's no other questions on item 5, we'll move on to item 6. Vice Chair Richards had to run to catch a plane, but since everyone but Danny was in the meeting for the Finance and Audit Committee, we will do a written report back. There were no decisions made at the meeting. It was just an update for the F&A report.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So my understanding is that only 3 people or whatever the rules are can participate, board members can participate in a Finance and Audit Committee.
No, everyone's invited. We were there.
Everybody's invited, but those who are not on the committee, are they authorized to participate?
Yes.
Do they vote?
No.
So they're welcome for discussion?
Yes.
I still would like a report because the history that I recall was we were all welcome to sit there, but if you're not on the committee, it's a slightly different.
No, we were all invited to participate and to ask questions, and we'll make sure that the materials are available in the report.
All right,
Tom
thank you.
was not intending not to report. He just had to run to catch a plane. So, okay. Thank you. Were there any other items from any board members? And did anyone have any items for the closed session? There were no items for decision at that meeting, so unless anyone would like to have a closed session, we will call the meeting adjourned. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.